Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author and speaker.
Doug Tenaple, I'm the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Tweet groups.
I'm Victor Dweck. Joseph Carter, I'm the Mink Man.
This is Dave Baker from Forged in Fire.
This is Leanne Morgan. I'm a comedian, and this is why you should never.
Don't ever.
Not ever.
Don't waste your time.
Oh, you really should.
Listen to those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Reverend and the Reprobate. I am Lucas Pinker, the Reverend, here with you as always with my partner in crime and a man whose mom is serving a second life sentence in prison. It's the Reprobate, Dan Gibson. Allegedly. So what, I want to know what happened, because I heard the scuffle in the yard turned bad because your mom took a shank?
Well, yeah, it was accidental. It was supposed to go to her cellmate.
Right.
They were playing football in the yard. And you know how these things go. First down, looks like a first down to somebody and not to another, and someone ends up shanked.
The next thing you know, toothbrush to the liver.
Yeah.
That's a bad way to go.
So this is my mother, Majin. She's in prison.
She
really drive the bit home.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to believe this?
No.
With us today is Texas Radio Hall of Famer and the host of Your Dark Companion, the voice of our childhood. It is Mr. Mike Rhyner. How are you today, Mike?
I'm great. Thank you, boys, for harboring me once again.
Oh, it's always a fun.
It's our pleasure. I was telling Danley before we got rolling, there are very few times where I get nervous whenever we have somebody on.
I'm feeling very fidgety right now myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my chair's squeaking and making noise. I got a restless leg right now. I'm sitting next to Mike. I got butterflies that are cocooned in my stomach because of this. So thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back.
I'm easy. Just relax. It's all good here.
By the way, you never asked about how my butterfly is doing. That was in the...
Yeah, how is your butterfly doing?
It's still in the
chrysalis?
sarcophagus.
Yeah?
Chrysalis, yeah. We're going on like 4 months of it being in the chrysalis.
Oh,
so
it's dead.
I'm pretty sure it died.
Is your son going to be heartbroken?
Nah, he knows. We caught a monarch caterpillar eating on some milkweed and put it in a little container, spun a chrysalis, and like, sweet. And then time goes on, and just let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to put those in boxes and
out.
get an ice pick, punch a few holes in it,
Yeah.
and just let them live out the rest of their days there.
It's either still cooking
How readily
or it's
available
dead.
was an ice pick when you were growing up? I don't know that I've ever actually seen one outside of the Sopranos.
Well, my parents had one. So
For what?
to break up ice.
Did you have just like a big block of ice in your
Yeah,
freezer?
yeah, that's the way a lot of people got ice back then. Sometimes there would be an ice guy that would come around
Like
every
the
few days
Schwann's
or so.
man?
Yeah, to deliver ice. But it was always in big blocks, so you had to have some to break it up. Hence the ice pick. I might still have. I might have my parents' ice pick now.
And that's still a thing. There are still people that manufacture big blocks of ice.
Yeah.
I know this because we used to work for a company that would travel around with athletes, and they would break said blocks of ice. We always had a place in any town pretty much that had a company that did that.
Yeah, the
Blew
300-pound
my mind.
blocks of ice. Yeah.
Huge blocks of ice. You can go buy one from somewhere here locally, I'm sure.
No, we won't. Danley had a parenting question for you, and I want us to start off here. Because we know you are an expert parent. You have raised a young female child from her infancy into adulthood. She's a graduate of the University of Spoiled Children, and
She is.
Yep, and is now she's got her own podcast. She's doing stuff in her own right. The lovely
Right.
Miss Jordan. So because of this, we want to do a parenting advice column with Mike Rhyner, and Danley's going to be your first client.
All right. What can I do for you?
Okay, so the situation is there's an 11-year-old who has been given BB gun, bow and arrow, has shown himself to be very responsible until Saturday,
Dum.
when a neighbor drove by and asked if there's anyone shooting BB guns in the area because his window got shot out. And so ultimately I said, we do have a BB gun. I don't think he would do this, but let me look into it. He owned up. He said, I shot the window. It's a big window. And so the guns are gone, ultimately. but this is a boy. But how would you handle that?
Well, how did you handle it?
Mike thinks guns are good, if you remember. And the list of things that he thinks are good.
I do too.
Guns are good, knives are
used
good.
responsibly, which was not in this case.
Okay.
So how I handled it is talk to him. He owned up to it. The next day, brought him over. I talked to the homeowner and brought my son up. And we had talked about a conversation he was going to have ahead of time. And he apologized and he owned up to it, but it's still going to cost Dad about $1,000 to replace the window. So I'm not 100% sure. There's going to be different punishments, but he can't make $1,000, to pay that off.
We're willing to pay him $9.50 an hour to do some yard work.
Yeah.
That's a start.
It's a start.
I don't know. I'd say you got this right.
Yeah.
You talk to them about it and hope that they hear you and hope that it'll never happen again.
Yeah.
Hope there's a lesson learned here. Now, when you really got a problem is if there is not a lesson learned, something like this happens again. That's when you got to clamp down a little harder.
Yeah.
But I would say always talk to them first, see if you get through. And if you get through, fine. Leave it be.
I hope it got through. I did find out today that not another window, but several assignments missing from school when he said that he was up to date, and there's some of this stuff going on. So we might be clamping down harder.
Maybe you need to look at that.
Yeah. But that's situation number 1.
That's a difficult situation to have, and I'm hoping for the best for you.
Well, I appreciate it.
Situation number 2. My brother has a daughter who's 2.5 years old, and she's terrible. So Thomas goes, and he's home.
You should say terrible.
She's terrible. Thomas goes, he's home. He goes, takes her to the store with him because they want a daddy-daughter day. The next day he's at work. His daughter has hit her older brother, and the mom is having this conversation that says, keep your hands to yourself. And as she's having this conversation, the little girl's face changes, and she goes, "Hey, Mommy, do you want to go see whether or not Daddy bought some fishing gear? I think I might know where to find it." And sure enough, she goes to the drawer, because he loves his daughter, took her to the store the day before. He goes to the drawer, takes out all of the new fishing stuff that Daddy bought in order to try to get Daddy in trouble because she was in trouble. How much trouble is my brother actually in for having a daughter that's that conniving at 2?
Boy, lots. Lots.
What should he
2
do?
years old, huh?
2 years old.
And already thinking like that.
I'm telling you.
Man, I wouldn't know what to tell him about that.
Should he kennel her?
That kid's already going pretty fast. 2 years old and already thinking like that?
I think so, too.
Terrible.
Yeah, she terrifies me.
Oh, she's so adorable, though.
She's scary.
Which probably
is what she
adds
is.
to her.
Those are the worst
scary.
kind.
Absolutely
Yeah.
scary. Yeah. I'm out of parenting questions.
Yeah.
That's all I had. We had just those 2.
I've got that big one right now, which you've already answered.
It's looming over over all of us.
It's a big, heavy cloud.
Whatever I can do to help you boys.
Well, I appreciate it.
Feel free.
Cool.
Anybody else out there, too?
You know what we might do is if you've got some yard work, we might send him over there to do some stuff around your house. Or you know what? We might send him to go fix the elevator in your building.
That would be good. That would be good.
Just email Mike's parenting tips at fakeemailaddress.com.
Yes.
.com. All right, so let's shift gears from parenting knowledge.
Yeah.
We know that the podcast is currently on hiatus. You've got petty theft that's still working right now. So what are you doing in the meantime? Is petty theft the only thing that you've got that's scratching any itches right now, or what do you have going on these days?
Really, that's really about the only itch scratcher I have. Now, I did get involved in this. I don't know if you're ready to bring this up.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's bring this up. The Accommodation.
Yes. This is a book by the great Jim Schutze, and it has to do with the racial history of Dallas. And it's a fantastic read, and if you are, regardless of whether you live in the city or not, if you care about Dallas, the area, and if you wonder why things are the way they are and how they used to be and what got them the way they are, then I think you'll find this book very interesting. It's an almost indispensable read if you're interested in the racial side of things.
So I'm curious because we were talking about this book. I'd never heard about it before, and there's a weird story behind it. Because you said it was originally like written and released in the 80s.
Yes.
And now it's being re-released.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that story.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that John Wiley Price, the county commissioner, wound up as the owner of the Accommodation. And it really just kind of sat on ice all through the 90s and the aughts, as near as I can tell. And now it's back and it's out and it's in a far more legitimate form, as you can see here, than it's ever been before. But I really don't know too much about the ins and outs of all that, of what happened between Jim Schutze and whatever publishing company that he wrote it for originally, and how John Wiley Price got involved or anything like that. I know Jim Schutze and John Wiley Price are cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, John Wiley Price does the foreword for this book, and John Wiley Price does make it sound like it's a very hot and cold relationship, though. But it seems like that's sort of the relationship that everybody has with Jim Schutze, is that if Jim's investigating
it's kind of the
you,
same relationship they have with John Wiley Price,
yeah.
too.
that seems to be the case. So what was it like? I guess start me from the beginning. How did you get involved in this project? Because you read the audiobook.
Yeah.
Who touches base with you and says, we want Mike Rhyner to read this?
It's crazy because one day I was about to get going for the day. I was thumbing through the phone, see what's going on out there. And one of the places I always go to every day is Front Burner on D Magazine. And on this day, they had put up a list of people who they thought could read the audiobook of The Accommodation. And I'm just not looking very far ahead, or anything like that. And I can't remember who the first three they put on there were, that they listed were. But I thumbed up a little bit more, and there I was at the fourth. And I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. Somebody thinks that I might, could do that. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, that'd be kind of fun to do. And then the more I thought about it after that, it's like, well, okay, why not me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I got on the phone with Tim Rogers over at D Magazine and said, hey, who do I need to talk to about doing the audiobook for The Accommodation? He gave me the publisher's name, Will Evans, at Deep Vellum Books. And I called Will Evans, and he kind of blew me off. He said, okay, well, we'll take it under advisement. Maybe we'll see what happens with it. And I thought, okay, nothing's going to happen with it.
Right.
Well, about 6 weeks or so after that, he called me back and said, hey, you want to do the audiobook? And I said, yeah, I want to do the audiobook. And so I rounded up a producer friend of mine who could do that with me, record it, edit it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we got down on it, and it was done over a period of about probably 7 sessions in the month of September.
Wow. That's a lot of reading.
Oh.
How long was each session?
Probably about 3-4 hours.
Good grief.
We would knock out 3, 4, 5 chapters in each session.
Because I've done that. I haven't done it professionally.
Right.
But I've read books to my son, or, my wife and I would read through a book. And especially if you're doing voices, if you're changing your voice, it can wear you out. So I could see back-to-back nights being bad. But you're saying, how 7 sessions, 3 to 4 hours, how long in between did you have to rest?
Probably a day or two.
Okay.
And
that worked out well?
Yeah. I was ready to go again after a day or two. It took me a little while to find my voice, or I thought it did anyway. that it was taking me a little while to find my voice, because the longer I went, the more comfortable I got with everything. And I thought that the earlier sessions would not be up to par compared to the later. I thought people would listen to the later and say, well, okay, and his earlier stuff didn't sound like that.
Yeah.
But as things have turned out, that's not really the case at all. Sounds pretty much the same.
Which makes sense. I mean, your voice is pretty distinguishable. I think that that's one of the things that, you know, like I said in the open, we...
Also, that Will guy is crazy.
Yeah, making you wait 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to read the book.
But it is,
we'll see.
Your voice is one of the most distinguishable voices. So how did you, when you say you had to find your voice, what do you mean by that? Talk us through what that was like.
Well, what I mean by that is this is a little bit different, you know. Usually when I've been on the air in an on-air situation or anything like that, it's all kind of off the cuff. You know, it's just like this, just us talking. Mm-hmm. And with this, you're looking at a screen, you're reading, and some of the sentences in here are very long and a little bit drawn out and everything.
Oh, you ain't lying.
And yeah, and you know, you have, there were a lot of times when I would read a sentence and I would have to go back and do it again and figure out what needs to be emphasized here, how I need to read it, how I need to make this come off, how do I need to get this across. Now, if I could have changed some of the verbiage, I could have made it a lot easier and a lot more sensible for publication, but that's not my job here. Right. My job is to read it, and I can't do that to the great Jim Schutze, because he's accomplished much more in his field than I ever have in mine.
Well, I think that's arguable.
I don't.
But but the whole process of reading the audiobook, so would you pre-read it? What you were going to read during each session?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, if we had a session coming up the next day, I would try to guesstimate how many chapters we were going to be able to knock out, you know, usually 3, 4, sometimes more, and I would read those 3 or 4 chapters. I'd go over them ahead of time and try to have some kind of concept as to what needed to be stressed, what was kind of funny, might be a little bit funny, whatever kind of language there might be in there that I would need to watch out for.
Oh yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to get at. So there are a lot of racial epithets in this text. What was that like, navigating some of those landmines as a white guy who is now reading a book about black history that is set in a historical time period where a lot of those references were not only common to the day, but more than that, taken out today, are just incredibly offensive. How did you navigate those waters?
We went around and round about how to do this, but at the end of the day, I thought that, as distasteful as it may be for me, and it certainly is because I don't like those words,
right?
But that's not my job here. My job is to tell the story, and those words and that verbiage and that language were part and parcel of the time back then. And those words and that verbiage further get across what things were like back then, just how just what the situation was like around here. Because the thing that comes out of the book that really grabs you, and I'd never really thought about it too much when I was a kid, but you'd have to look pretty far to find a city as big as Dallas that has never had riots. Dallas never had riots, and it was really, really important to the power brokers of the city that it remained that way. It was, I mean, that mattered to them more than anything else. And that point is gotten across in this book. They're very, very proud of the fact that what happened out in Watts in Los Angeles in the 60s, what happened in Detroit, what happened in virtually every other major city. This great land of ours never happened there. But my job was to get all that across, and at that time, hearing that verbiage and hearing people say that verbiage, those words, those epithets, that was all in a day's work around here.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard them. You were around them every day. And you grew up with them. And you were taught to think of them as it's just the way people talk. So that was the approach, and that's the way that I did it.
It kind of sounds like, or I'm, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of like Django Unchained.
Yeah.
Where Leonardo DiCaprio plays the lead, and they use some of those same words. I mean, they use them a lot. It is a Quentin Tarantino movie,
Right.
But they do, that's how he paints his villain. That's how he tells the story, and puts Django into a very deep, dark hole that he has to overcome. And they do justice with it. And I'm sure that they hated, using that kind of lingo. But it tells the story.
It's similar to what you're talking about here.
And what I'm talking about is fiction. But
Yeah, and that's
there's nothing fictitious about this.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit in one of our previous episodes of Live at 5 about how there are certain things that we read in people's voices, and I told you I read your text messages and stuff in your voice. When I heard that you had read The Accommodation, we talked about that, and then I purchased the book later. I was trying to read it in your voice, but I was coming across those words, and I just couldn't do it. There was no way. There were a couple of words, and I was like, he just wouldn't ever say this, right? There's no way that would flow right out of it.
Not only did he say it, but it's on tape.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's out there for the record.
Yeah. So we won't be
But
turning any of those into
that's
drops.
not me saying that. I never would say that thing in real life, but this was not real life. This is a book. This is a historical account. And to get across the impact of what life for black people was like around here in our fair burg back then, like I say, mine was not to make any kind of judgment call here. Mine was to bite down, swallow hard, and read what's on the page. Which
it seems like, as much as I've read of the book, there are some pretty harrowing stories that are in this thing.
Yeah.
Did you, let's talk, before we get into the stories themselves, let's talk about the vocal work. When you are narrating, I'm sure you're using one voice. Do you change your voice up when you're doing the citations and the quotes in order that they're distinguishable in the audio? How did you navigate those fields?
No, I didn't change my voice up any. I mean, it is me all the way through, and I only got one voice, and this is it. And that's what you will hear when you read the audiobook. Now, in quotations, I would always say quote,
right,
to quote somebody, and then end it with end quote. And that's how we delineated that. That's how we navigated those waters.
Okay, because there's guys like, I don't know if you've ever listened to the Hardcore History podcast. I know a few guys back on the ticket did. Bob is actually who turned me on to it whenever Dane Carlin did his whole thing in World War I. And he does the open and close quotes, but he's got a slightly different voice when he quotes people. He's got a slightly different voice when he does citations versus when he does the total narration. And it seems like that would be an odd thing to do because, especially for you who's been... This is the voice that we're all so used to. Do you think that having your voice be the voice of this book makes it more real in some instances to the Dallas listener, especially because it's coming from the voice of, let's say, people who have listened to you to forever, the voice of a kind of like a friend or a comforting voice that they've heard for so many years? Do you think it lends an authenticity to the book because of that?
I would hope so. And the fact that I am from here and all of these people and places and episodes that are accounted for in the book are stuff that I kind of remember. Now, a lot of it happened when I was very, very young. I was telling you earlier that in the 50s, one of the things that the book talks about is how they would blow up houses where black families lived over in South Dallas in the middle of the night, And I was very, very young when this was going on. Like I don't even know if I was a year old yet. But I do remember hearing my parents talk about that.
Wow.
And I don't know. I just kind of had to. I'm new to this, you know. I've never done anything like this before, and I just had to find my voice, find my way through it. The producer that I worked with, Danny Owen, did a great job of steering me right. And whenever he didn't like something that I read, he'd tell me go back and do it again. I mean, he rode me pretty hard about this, which is what I wanted.
Right. What was that like, being told that you don't talk good and having to, having to redo something when you've done this for, how many years? You're a Hall of Famer for talking.
Yeah, but I'm not a good talker. I'm not a good talker. Nobody's a good talker. If you get all of us away when we're off the air and just in conversation, we're like everybody else. Stumbling over words, half phrases, incomplete sentences, poor grammar, poor syntax, all of it.
You save the 25-cent words for the air.
Yeah,
For the air.
yeah, I do. I just stuck to the script here.
So one book down, right? Did you enjoy the process enough that you want to continue?
I would love to. I would love to do another.
I can see it being a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would like to do a sports book.
Oh, yeah. Would you ever read any of Skip Bayless's books?
Yes, I would. I sure would.
Really?
Yeah.
Would you read Hellbent? Or would that get you in trouble with Troy?
He probably wouldn't like it too much. I do try to maintain good relations with him.
I think that would be the only thing I would worry about.
I also try to maintain good relationships with Troy Aikman.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
You guys are friends from a distance?
Yeah, he doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, I took a little initiative one day. There is a book called, I can't think of the name of it right now, but there's a book that a guy named John Eisenberg wrote. John Eisenberg was a sports writer who plied his craft around here for a long time at the Dallas Times-Herald, and I think at the Morning News too. And he finally saw himself blocked at every path as he was trying to get ahead. And so what he did was he went somewhere else where there was a little bit clearer path. And he's ever since then, and then we're talking about the probably 80s or so, through the 90s and even today, he's been in Baltimore.
Okay.
And he's a columnist for the Baltimore Sun. But the book that he wrote while he was here was a book about what it was like in those early years of the AFL and in the early years of the Cowboys when we had two football teams here.
Yeah, when we had the, what would that have been, the Texans?
The Texans and the Cowboys.
Yep.
And that book just hit home with me like few others ever have. And I read it many years ago, but I haven't. And I saw it on my shelf, and I thought, I wonder if an audiobook has ever been done on this. And so out of the blue, I emailed John Eisenberg. I didn't have his address or anything. I just was kind of riffing a little bit. But it got to him, and I said, has an audiobook ever been done of this? And he said, yeah, it has.
Oh.
So I was disappointed by that, but still, I'm looking.
It's a freaking bin and skin.
I mean, if anybody's got any audiobook ideas out there, hit me. Down with it.
I love the idea. I don't know about you doing sports though. It's hard to.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine him
picture
doing
that.
sports.
Yeah,
The Charlie Waters, Cliff Harris book that they did, the Cowboys Stories or whatever that was called. That'd be a fun audiobook to do.
That would be a fun one to do. Love to do that.
You should reach out to them. We have no connections with Cliff Harris or Charlie Waters, but
Well, I doubt if anybody who would make that call would be either of them.
I do have an excerpt that I wouldn't mind hearing you read.
oh goodness, what is this from?
Do you have your voice warmed up?
I think so.
All right, here you go. Number 5.
What is this from?
This is from a book, The Hobbit, by J.R.R. Tolkien,
All right.
narrated by Mike Rhyner.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Smaug lay with wings folded like an immeasurable bat, turned partly on one side, so that the Hobbit could see his underparts and his long, pale belly crusted with gems and fragments of gold from his long lying in his costly bed. Behind him, where the walls were nearest, could be dimly seen coats of mail, helms and axes, swords and spears hanging, and there in rows stood great jars and vessels filled with a wealth that could not be guessed. To say that Bilbo's breath was taken away is no description at all. There are no words left to express his staggerment, since men changed the language that they learned of elves in the days when all the world was wonderful. Bilbo had heard tell and sing of dragon hordes before, but the splendor, the lust, the glory of such treasure had never yet come home to him. His heart was filled and pierced with enchantment and with the desire of dwarves, and he gazed motionless, almost forgetting the frightful guardian at the gold beyond price and count.
Wow.
Whoa. You can do anything.
Did I pass the audition?
Oh, man.
I think so. And
I think
because
you
of
got
that,
the gig.
because are you familiar with G.K. Chesterton?
I don't think so.
All right, so he was an essayist during the turn of the 20th century, and he wrote a very famous essay, which I have an excerpt of that I would also like you to read, called On Chasing After One's Own Hat.
All right.
And so
That's
here
something
we go.
I know a little bit about.
Yeah. This is my favorite part of our interview so far.
Okay.
Reading with Mike Rhyner.
Yes. On chasing after one's own hat.
Yep, and to scroll up, you just use two fingers and flick it up. There you
Like
go, just
that.
like that. Yep.
Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. For instance, there is a current impression that it is unpleasant to have to run after one's hat. Why should it be unpleasant to the well-ordered and pious mind? Not merely because it is running, and running exhausts one. The same people run much faster in games and sports. The same people run much more eagerly after an uninteresting little leather ball than they will after a nice silk hat. There's an idea that it is humiliating to run after one's hat, and when people say it's humiliating, they mean that it is comic. It certainly is comic, but man is a very comic creature, and most of the things he does are comic. Eating, for instance. And the most comic things of all are exactly the things that are most worth doing, such as making love. A man running after a hat is not half so ridiculous as a man running after a wife. Now, a man could, if he felt rightly in the matter, run after his hat with the manliest ardor and the most sacred joy. He might regard himself as a jolly huntsman pursuing a wild animal, for certainly no animal could be wilder. In fact, I'm inclined to believe that hat hunting on windy days will be the sport of the upper classes in the future. There will be a meet of ladies and gentlemen on some high ground on a gusty morning. They will be told that the professional attendants have started a hat in such and such a thicket, or whatever be the technical term. Notice that this employment will in the fullest degree combine sport with humanitarianism. The hunters would feel that they were not inflicting pain. Nay, they would feel that they were inflicting pleasure, rich, almost riotous pleasure, upon the people who were looking on. When I last saw an old gentleman running after his hat in Hyde Park, I told him that a heart so benevolent as his ought to be filled with peace and thanks at the thought of how much unaffected pleasure his every gesture and bodily attitude were at that moment giving to the crowd.
That's fantastic.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. For
Also, thank you.
Also,
you
what
for
a
those
great
indulgences.
essayist.
Yeah, absolutely.
G.K. Chesterton is so awesome.
Very.
Hey,
very good
summarize the
stuff.
one about cheese.
So he has an essay on cheese where he's very upset that poets have not written more about cheeses.
Yeah.
and he's at a particular restaurant, and he asks
This guy's really worried a lot about what people write about him.
He's hilarious.
Anyway, he's at a restaurant.
Yeah, so he's at a restaurant, and he asks the waiter for a cheese plate, and the boy brings him some cheese, but no bread. And so he asks, do you have some crackers or some bread? And he brings him out a soft bread roll. And he's offended. He said, what is this that you would bring me soft bread? How can I spread my cheese on this soft bread? This is an atrocity for you to do this. He said, but alas, the boy knew no better. So I tapped the poor lad and bid him good day. But it's 2,500 words on why he was so offended that this boy didn't bring him proper cheeses, and that cheese is one of those things that not enough poets have written about.
He was the Larry David of his time.
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely no doubt. At the turn of the 20th century, he was the Larry David in 1911. He actually was one of the first guys that sort of started writing about the red flags that were happening over in Germany. He has a great essay called On Barbarism, where he starts talking about the Nazi movement and some of the things that are happening over there, and the relationship that the British Prime Minister, he was from England, the relationship that the British Prime Minister had with Hitler, and how it seemed like they had made some sort of handshake agreement not to go to war with one another and to turn a blind eye to the fact that Germany was violating all of its treaties. And he likened it to a great flood that could fill the earth if gone unchecked. And Winston Churchill actually quoted that essay later during World War II to say that there were warning posts of everything that was happening in Germany, but nobody paid attention to them because they were written with such whimsy that people felt like it was fanciful and not at all probable.
G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah, just absolutely
Hitler.
incredible
So
stuff.
he wasn't serious about this, huh?
Oh, he was very serious about it, but since he wrote in such a different style and was an essayist and not a journalist or a political commentator that people took too seriously, people kind of wrote him off. So
Wow.
yeah,
G.K. Chesterton's cool.
he's definitely written some fascinating stuff. Speaking of people who have written fascinating stuff, if you were to give, we've talked to you about parenting, we've talked to you about reading books. If you were to give somebody a list of, here are the 5 books that everybody needs to read, what would you put on that list?
Wow. 5 books everybody needs to read.
Yeah, because I know you're a reader. You're a literature guy.
Yeah, I am. My fields are pretty limited. I read a lot of music books. I read a lot of sports books.
Right.
And for something else to get my attention, it's got to be something pretty extraordinary.
Right.
One of my favorite baseball books is a book by a guy named Pat Jordan.
Okay.
Called A False Spring. Pat Jordan went on to be a writer. But when he was a kid, he was a pretty good baseball player.
Okay.
He was a pitcher. And he wrote this book about going to spring training, signing with the Milwaukee Braves, which tells you how old this is.
Yeah, no kidding.
This was like back in the 50s, and going to spring training with them. And this was a time when major league teams had tons and tons of minor league affiliates, you know?
Okay.
Like they had, 6, 7 minor league affiliates. That was not unusual at all. And there were a ton of guys in spring training just trying to draw attention, you know? And he tells of leaving his home and going to this and going through all that. And Pat Jordan would later in life become not a baseball player, but a very well-known and often published writer.
Huh.
I mean, if you Google him, you'll see what he's done. You probably read some of his stuff and may not even know about it. But this was my first exposure to him. It was one of the first baseball books I ever read, and it still stays with me to this day as one of the best.
All right.
I think the only baseball book I ever read was the biography of Billy Sunday.
Not familiar.
Billy Sunday? I don't remember his. I don't remember if this is it's a nickname or if it's his actual name, but he ended up becoming a preacher too. But he was famous in a long. I don't remember the time frame, but he grew up pitching at or swinging at wiffle ball, and then eventually moved on to baseball.
Yeah.
We'll put the tag in the comments.
What about Game of Shadows? Would you put that on your top 5?
Game of Shadows.
That was the one that kind of uncovered some of the stuff about steroids in baseball that came out.
Yeah, that. I don't know if that'd make top 5. It was an interesting read, but I don't know if that would make my top 5.
So Pat Jordan's in your top 5. Who else we got?
Let's see. I probably couldn't make a list like that without Roger Angel being in there somewhere. Because
Okay.
I love his stuff. As far as other baseball writers that I enjoy, most of them are more like, newspaper guys.
Yeah. Like Randy Galloway, who kept our aforementioned friend in Baltimore blocked from being able to move up.
Well, I don't know if it was like that. As far as I know, they were good colleagues and pretty good friends. But I don't know. Any book you find by John Eisenberg's a good read too.
Yeah. John Eisenberg,
that's-
Pat Jordan.
That's 3.
Yeah.
That's 3.
What do you need? 2 more from me?
Yeah. Give us 2 more. Round out the 5.
Okay.
Nice round 5.
Oh, let's see. Boy, I wish you'd have given me a heads up on this. I'd have come up with something really good for you.
I wish I'd have
How
had a
about-
heads up on this. I just thought about it.
Oh, you're just riffing too, huh?
Yeah.
How about coming on at number 4? Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man by Tim Allen.
I've not read that one.
It's just a hilarious title. It's like when someone says, "What's your favorite movie?" You can say Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got
Safe.
everything.
Don't stand too close to a naked man. It's gonna get a laugh.
All right. Well, if we're struggling with 4 and 5, here's what I want to know. Then, if we're switching to movies, we talked Princess Bride. What did you hate the most about Star Wars whenever you had to watch it a few years ago?
Everything.
Is this every single Star Wars or a particular one?
The first one.
He just had to watch the first one. You liked Obi-Wan Kenobi though, didn't you?
Yeah. I like him.
What about Vader?
I liked him okay too, but
He's the best
I don't
part.
know. Just the whole thing is just not my bag. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Because they didn't play baseball with lightsabers? What?
Yeah, probably.
You probably would get along well with Han Solo.
You think?
Because Solo didn't buy into all of this.
No.
I don't remember what he said, but it's
Hokey religions and
it's a
ancient
hokey
weapons.
religion,
Yeah.
wizard in space.
Yeah, I probably would. I don't know. It just
He's
the
like, I
whole
wanna make
Star
money.
Wars thing just never really grabbed me.
So what were you watching instead of Star Wars then in 1977?
In 1977, I was probably watching a lot of rom-coms
Why?
because I liked them.
You liked so what kind of rom-coms were happening in 1977? Not You've Got Mail because it would have been snail mail.
Yeah, no, it's not you. You've got mail for
You've
sure.
got pen pals.
I don't know. There are a lot. I know it's heresy to speak of Woody Allen
Yeah, these days.
these days,
Yep.
but Woody Allen is an outrageously great filmmaker, and nobody can take that away from him.
No, I loved his movie. Have you seen Midnight in Paris?
Yes.
Oh, it's one of my
Seen 'em all.
favorites.
Back then in the 70s, Manhattan
Okay.
was his big one.
Yeah.
And I had never been to New York at the time. New York was this kind of really mythical place to me, a place that I thought it was quite likely that I would never get to. But I saw Manhattan, and I saw the way he treated the city of New York and the architecture of New York and the vibe of New York in that book. And I thought, man, I've got to get there. I've got to get there some way, somehow, because this is a completely different way of life from what you know, and I've got to see it.
I completely relate.
Yeah.
What was your first trip to New York like? Did it live up to the hype or not?
Yes, it did. My first trip to
Mine did too.
New York was some years back after the ticket had started. HBO had put out a Billy Crystal movie about baseball.
Okay.
I think I've seen that one.
Possible. I don't know. I can't think of the name of it right now. Needless to say, now that I need to be thinking of this stuff, I can't.
Lucas and I are racing right now to find it.
Okay, Billy Crystal baseball movie on HBO.
Well, no, it's not City Slickers.
No, it's not that. But anyway, HBO sent Grego and I up.
61.
Yeah, that was it. 61.
There you go.
Yeah.
Win. Well
Boom.
done.
Yeah. One for
Yeah,
the
this was a
reprobate.
book about the 1961 or a movie about the 1961 Yankees season when Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's home run record.
Okay.
And what it did to Roger Maris and the toll that it took on a guy who was from Fargo, North Dakota, and was just not ready for what doing something like that would bring down on him. It's really a good movie and a good story. But HBO was flush with money at that time, and they thought it would be a good idea to get radio guys talking about it. So
All right.
they sent us up there to attend the premiere.
Because you guys were the baseball show of record.
That's right. We were the baseball show of record, so we got to go to this. And after the show on Friday, we flew up there. We got to the hotel probably about 10 o'clock that night, and I was so sucked up in it right then, right there, that I went to my room, threw my stuff on the bed, and then went out and just walked around New York until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
That's on mine.
And I was
Wow.
not tired either.
Yep.
Really?
I mean, there's something about New York that just electrifies you.
It's a city that never
Yeah,
sleeps.
I ended
Yes,
up in
it is.
Times Square
Yeah.
at 4 a.m. going, this is way too bright. Like, it was blindingly bright. And there were
Yes.
so many people. This is all before COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a hot dog and pizza, the best pizza I've ever had in my whole life. It's
never
true,
been.
It's true what they say.
I've never been to New York City.
It's unmatched pizza.
There's nothing like it, man. There
Went to-
is nothing
Went
like
to the
it.
Comedy Cellar. I went to all the places I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Started with Ground Zero. We
My
got
dad
the-
went a few years ago, and the one spot that he really wanted to hit was CBGB because he was a kid of the 80s and loved those old punk bands. And so he hit up CBGB's, and he said it was like surreal. It was like walking, for him it was the same experience he had whenever he walked into Yankee Stadium, that it was just this awe-inspiring thing for all the music and all the great stuff that was there at that place. What places did you visit when you were in New York? Like, what were your go-to spots that you had to go to?
Well, we were only up there that time for about a day or two, but I've been
Okay.
there several times since then.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know if I really have go-to spots. I just like to get out and walk around and see the place because it's not like anything else. It really is not.
I need to check it out. It's on my list, right? My wife has gone. There's a couple of places that I've been that she wants to go. We're planning a trip. She graduates with her master's degree, fingers crossed, here in about 18 months. So we're thinking an international trip after that, but I've always wanted to go to New York. She
gotta
only got to go there for like 2 days. And we
Go
want
to
check it out.
McSorley's when you go.
McSorley's?
Yeah, it's a Civil War era bar that they have.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they have dog tags. I believe it's dog tags hanging from the ceiling where soldiers would grab an ale on their way out and they'd hang the dog tag and never returned.
Really?
And it's something like when you buy a beer, you get two. Like they have some weird traditions.
That's surreal.
Yeah.
Anything you want, they
McSorley's.
got it there.
All right. I'll have to check it out. Well, Mike, we end all of our episodes, as you well know, with a segment called Controlled Rowdiness. We're just going to ask you some rapid-fire questions. You can answer them as quickly as you want to or as much length as you want to. There are no right answers, but there are several wrong answers, so make sure not to step on any of those landmines. And I'm going to send it over to Sweet Clean Dan Lily to get us rolling.
How do you forge an ice?
How do you forge an ice?
Yep.
Yes.
Probably with an ice pick.
There we go.
This is actually a pretty popular answer to this stupid question.
yeah, that's it. All right, Mike, aliens have landed. They've abducted you, and they said, listen, we hear you're a fantastic storyteller. Tell us a story so good in the next 60 seconds that we don't blow up the earth. What story do you tell them?
First time in New York.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, which I feel like we just heard, so I think you could do that in under 60 seconds. All right, Dan.
What are your feelings on bidets? Life-changing or overrated?
I have no experience,
Really?
no personal experience with them. But I certainly do see a path where most would find them quite useful.
I do too. They have to have a direct line to water is part of it. And ideally, you'd have two lines, one for hot water and one for cold. So it has to be close to a sink. I'm very far down the bidet path. Not so far that I have one, but I'm on the way.
But you're on the way.
I'm on the way.
This is something that's got you intrigued.
It's changed my life.
Have you ever used one?
No.
But how's it changed your life?
It was just a lie to move the narrative forward. This is just a lie. I'm the reprobate.
Yeah. All right. What Tom Petty song are you most tired of playing?
Good question.
The most Tom Petty song I'm most tired of playing, probably Refugee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
There's just not much left for me to do with it. I'm always looking for different little wiggles that I can end a phrase with here and there, and that song doesn't lend itself very well to that sort of thing. So that would probably be it. It's a great song. It's a great record. And believe me, if you come to see Petty Theft and we're up there playing it, I'm not going to be up there thinking, God, I hate this thing. I'm so tired of this. I'm not going to be up there. I'm going to give it the best I can. But if somebody told me that you can do this thing for however long you want to do it and never play Refugee again, I'd be down with that.
It does have some weird vocal stuff. You do, yeah. It's hard to do. I can understand why that would be a bit of a beating after a while.
Well, I don't know. Probably a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've just heard it too much.
Yeah.
Because I was in music radio when that record came out, and the record came out, and we played it every 4 hours, and I don't know. It probably has worn on me a little bit more than most of the others have.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Does Ross Ulbricht deserve to have his sentence commuted?
Ooh, this is a good question.
How long's he been in?
This is year 9.
It was about 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's enough, I would say.
I think so too.
That's enough.
I think so too.
I think the boy has paid his debt to humanity, and I think he does deserve to have his sentence commuted.
Yeah.
I would love to have him here on the outside and see what he comes up with next.
Me too.
Clearly, he's a big thinker.
Yeah.
What about Joe Exotic?
They can't keep that guy clamped down enough.
All right, last question. You can have dinner with any 3 people, living or dead, all throughout history. Who would you sit down and have dinner with? And obviously, you can't say us because we've already had a meal together.
Yeah,
we know how boring that is.
Well, no, it was not boring. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, you're a great liar.
No, I'm not. All right, if I could get him into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could, but I would love to have Donald Fagen as part of that group. When you get Donald Fagen into it, he's fascinating. Now, I wouldn't have the slightest idea what it takes to get him into it, but I've read a lot of interviews with him. I read everything that I can find about the guy. And I can tell kind of when he's into it and when he's not.
Yeah.
And when he's into it, it's an amazing story. So, yes, he would have to be.
All right, Donald Fagen is one. So who takes the other 2 spots?
How about Ben Shapiro? You can go ahead. You can go.
No, he's not taking Ben Shapiro to dinner with Steely Dan. So Shapiro can ruin it by fast talking.
Yeah.
All right, so Donald Fagen.
Fact checking. Actually,
Yep. Donald Fagen's number one.
All right, now I'm going to have to limit my guests. And if I'm going to have Donald there, then I'm going to probably have to have somebody that he will get along with, too, and that he will be curious about.
So no Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, no Ben Shapiro.
He's not kosher, huh?
No Ben Shapiro.
Shut up with
No Ben Shapiro.
Shut up with Ben Shapiro.
And Donald Fagen is not a sports nerd.
Right.
So that's probably going to take sports cretins out of the mix as well.
Well, they're all here at dinner to talk to you. So it's your dinner. You don't have to worry about treating Donald Fagen. Donald Fagen's going to be into it no matter who you bring to dinner. That's the scenario.
Okay.
That's
all
the
right.
hypothetical we're throwing down.
He doesn't even care what's being served.
Donald Fagen is excited to have dinner with Mike Rhyner.
Yes.
Who else would you bring?
I think I would include Troy Aikman in that bunch.
All right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
can see Troy.
Yeah, our good friend Troy.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot more to Troy than meets the eye for most people. In fact, I know there is, because for years and years, we saw what and only what he allowed us to see.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was not much. Like, it was pretty much stick to football. If you were around there every day, if you were a beat writer and you were around him every day, then you probably got a little bit better look at him. But, yeah, I would put Troy Aikman on that panel as well.
All right. Troy Aikens, Donald Fagen.
Yeah.
And who's your final answer?
All right. Need a woman here, don't we?
Sure. Why not?
If you wanted to pass the Bestel test.
Yeah. Yeah, but
What is it
also,
called?
look, I gave Danley's son a great piece of advice years ago. He did. Any place where there's a bunch of guys having fun, there's always a girl that's looking on trying to ruin it. So, and that happens.
That is great advice.
Yeah. So just I told him, be wary of women, because they're just looking to
They wanna
ruin.
stop you from having fun.
Yeah, they just want to ruin a good time anytime they see it happening. Because they don't understand how we can just be sitting around having fun.
All right, so then you got to get a guy's gal.
Okay, there you go. The sports princess.
No. And I don't know too many guys, gals.
Right.
But, let's see. One of those chicks on ESPN would probably be good.
Yeah, which one? Not Susie Colbert.
No.
No.
No, not her. I don't know. They really don't have too many that I think would be these days that I think would be, fun for something like that.
You bring back Erin Andrews?
No.
How about Rachel Levine?
Which one's she? I don't know if I know her.
She's
Transgender general.
the associate health admiral.
We don't have to continue with this one.
No, somehow I don't think it would be her.
No. Shut up.
God, boy, this is a tough one. I don't know. Throw some other names out there at me. I'm kind of not thinking very
Gal
straight
Gadot.
here. No, I don't think.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, maybe, but not really.
Yeah. I'm saying out of politics. A lot of politicians come to my mind.
Yeah.
And the thing about Hillary Clinton is, and politicians in general, is if we're going to do this, if I'm going to sit down with these guys and talk to them, then I want the truth. I want them to give me something,
Yeah.
And I don't think politicians would do that.
I can't think of any women right now.
Doris Burke?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Doris Day?
Doris.
Yeah, Doris Burke would be
Doris
fun.
Burke would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. She knows a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I don't think she'd be put off with Donald Fagen.
No, because he's going to be guaranteed Donald Fagen is into it.
And he's going to have a good
So
time.
Donald Fagen, Troy Aikman, and Doris Burke. There you go. Where are you guys going to eat?
Where are we going to eat?
Yeah.
I don't know, Griff's or somewhere like that.
All right.
Cool.
You don't know what Griff's is?
No idea. Mm-mm. We don't run around in the kind of circles that can go eat at places like Griff's.
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah. Well, Griff's was it was kind of a forerunner of the Crystal. You know the Crystal?
Yeah, the burger.
Yeah,
right. The little burgers.
Yeah, the little burger
with the K.
Yeah, Crystal with the K. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That sounds like a circle
Sorry.
we can run with.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're
I
talking
got a little
White Castle.
I got a little too esoteric there. I'm sorry.
No, that's
you're good.
that's fine. As soon as we figure out what esoteric means, we'll let you know.
It means that I know that you don't.
Yes.
Well, on that note, hey everybody, thanks for watching the Reverend and the Reprobate. Make sure that you like, subscribe, ding the little bell to follow us. Check out Mike on social media. Tell our guests where it is that they can find you, Mike.
Twitter at the Old Gray Wolf. Facebook, Mike Rhyner.
Check him out. Follow him. Petty Theft is up and gigging. They got a lot of stuff going on towards the end of the year, Christmas parties and other gigs and that kind of thing. Make sure that you keep up with that. Thank you guys for watching the Reverend and the Reprobate. Y'all have good and get give, and we will see you next week.
Hi, this is Mike Rhyner. You should never, ever listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate. Don't. You're wasting your time. You got better things to do. It's a big world out there. Go out in it.